Hi, Room 5. Time for another reading from Wonderland. Rose. The next day, Rose moped. She rearranged her china horses. She counted her dresses to see if Mavis had been right. Yep, 17. Then she went into Grace's room and wandered around, touching her things and looking at her scrapbook filled with movie tickets, stubs, and dance recital programs, and a lock from a boyfriend. She went downstairs, stepped on every single square of the marble tile in the foyer. She sat on the velvet couch in the living room and listened to her mother explaining to Miss Jetta what to do about the white water ring on the mahogany dining room table. When her mother said something like, "That is what coasters are for," Miss Jetta said something back in a snappy voice. When Munro Tucker started the hedge clippers out in the yard, Rose went out on the porch and sat between Pete and Larry and watched them trim the boxwoods along the driveway. But after a very short while, Rose got tired of moping. She thought about getting her skateboard out of the garage and riding around Magnolia Estates. Wouldn't that surprise everyone? But no, that didn't sound like much fun, so Rose decided to visit Mr. Duffy. Imagine her surprise when she got to the gatehouse and there was Mavis, playing checkers with Mr. Duffy. In fact, she was so surprised that all she said was, "Oh." Mr. Duffy said, "Hey there," and Mavis lifted a limp hand in a half-hearted wave. "You're playing checkers," Rose said. Mr. Duffy nodded. "That we are." "I thought you didn't like playing checkers anymore," Rose said, trying very hard not to sound like a baby, even though she was pretty sure she did. Mr. Duffy chuckled. "Well, old Mavis here is one stubborn mule. I had about as much chance as a grasshopper in a chicken house trying to say no to her." "Oh," Rose said again. She was pretty sure Mavis was trying not to smile. She saw the corners of her mouth twitching. Then suddenly Mavis jumped Mr. Duffy's checkers with 3 loud slaps on the board and hollered, "Boom, boom, boom, king me!" She jumped off her stool, did a little jig of a dance, pumping her fists and saying, "That's what I'm talking about." Mr. Duffy laughed hard. Then he took a handkerchief out of his pocket and wiped his eyes. Jealousy bubbled up inside of Rose, making her stomach hurt and her face burn. Then the bubbly jealousy worked its way down to her feet, making her run out of the gatehouse door and all the way back home. Henry didn't know how many days it had been since he had crawled under the fence and run away from Wonderland, but each day seemed to get harder. He wandered through the woods during the day, sometimes napping on damp moss in the cool shade of the sycamore trees. At night, he searched for food in the alleys behind the diners and the markets and laundry. Once in a while, he wandered through neighbourhoods, sniffing around garbage cans and occasionally coming upon a bowl of food left out for somebody's wandering cat. But Henry just wasn't hungry. He was lonely. At least at Wonderland, there were other dogs to keep him company. He used to hate staying cooped up in a kennel so much, but now that he was free, the kennel didn't seem so bad. And although he never had one person to call his own, there had been trainers and handlers and around most of the time. And then there was that bald man called Roger who called him Naughty Rocket Boy and gave him a pat on his head once in a while. But now that Henry was out of Wonderland, he realised that what he really longed for was someone of his own. He often thought about those girls, the wild-haired one and the quiet one, how they called him Henry and stroked his sides and kissed his nose. As the sun began to sink and the fireflies twinkled amongst the ferns and the mayaples scattered through the woods, Henry scratched at the leaves and pine needles to make a soft bed for the night. By the time darkness had settled, he was dreaming. A peaceful dream of being stroked and kissed and loved by someone of his own. Mavis wasn't a moper. She was a doer. a problem solver, an adventure seeker. But here she was on a sunny summer day in Laundry, Alabama, sitting on a log in a vacant lot, moping. Because here she was without a best friend again. She had thought this time would be different. She had been certain that she and Rose would be real best friends. Not the fake kind that she had before. The kind where someone claimed to be your best friend and then the next thing you knew, they were telling lies about you on the playground or not saving you a seat on the bus and flinging peas at you in the cafeteria while the other kids at the table laughed. But now here she was on her log by herself. And Rose was in a fancy house, probably admiring her 17 dresses or eating tomato aspic off a china plate. Or maybe she was in the mother-daughter book club with her new best friend. Mavis kept watching the street, hoping to see Rose head her way, but she didn't. The street was empty. The vacant lot was empty except for the grasshoppers popping up every now and then in the tall, dry weeds. The sun beat down, burning the back of Mavis's neck, making the red dirt beneath her bare feet warm as toast. Suddenly, Mavis was struck with a feeling. Loneliness. A deep, sad loneliness that caught her off guard and made her cry. A slow, quiet cry. The tears rolling down her cheeks and dropping onto the dry dirt beside the log. Mavis thought about the day when Mr. Duffy had talked about Edna keeping the coffee warm and how she felt so jealous seeing what good friends Rose and Mr. Duffy were. She thought about Rose going to Wonderland even when she didn't really want to. She thought about how she'd gone into the woods where she wasn't supposed to go. How she had borrowed Amanda's bike and gotten her sandals dirty and let Mavis take her mother's quiche and liver pate. Mavis wished Rose was here, being her best friend again. She swished a stick around the dry dirt beside the log. She wrote, Rose plus Mavis. Then she tossed the stick into the bushes and headed home to listen to her mother complain about Mrs. Tully.